There are nights that change a life, nights that carve new timelines, rewriting everything a person thought they knew about themselves. For Stephen Madison, a white American billionaire with an empire built on impeccable logic and unbreakable walls. That night arrived disguised as just another overtime shift. And for Julie Johnson, a brilliant Black American analyst fighting her way through generational storms. It was the night she unknowingly stepped into the center of a destiny she wasn't prepared for. But the story doesn't begin with the crash. It begins with the fracture. Stephen never believed in second chances. Not for employees, not for the market, not for love. His father's voice still echoed through the mansion of his memory. Weakness will ruin you. He took that lesson and constructed a world made of numbers and control. A life where nothing unpredictable could penetrate. Then came Julie. He didn't notice her at first, not until she walked into his office carrying a worn leather portfolio and the kind of calm confidence that unsettled powerful men. She didn't dress to impress. She dressed to work. Her gray suit was neat, but tired. Her natural curls pinned into a bun that felt more functional than stylish. No fancy watch, no bragging, no fear. She shook his hand with a grip far too steady for someone on a 3-month contract. "Mr. Madison," she said. Her voice warm but firm. "Your problem isn't supply chain failure. It's communication failure. The warehouse managers and procurement team aren't using the same data. Give me access. I'll fix it. Not try to fix it. Not look into it. Fix it." Stephen blinked. People usually trembled around him. She didn't. He gave her access. She solved it in 2 weeks and 4 days. After that, the office seemed to rearrange itself around her presence. He started calling her into meetings she didn't technically need to attend, just to hear what she thought. She never coddled him. She never softened truth. She never flirted. She simply did the work and did it better than anyone he'd ever hired. One night, the office emptied early for a corporate gala. Neither of them cared to attend. Stephen stayed behind reviewing quarterly numbers. Julie stayed behind because she always stayed behind. "Why aren't you at the gala?" he asked. "Why aren't you?" she countered. "Touché." They worked in silence for a while, the warm glow of the city seeping through the windows. Then Julie spoke quietly, eyes on her screen. "I turned down permanent positions. You know." Stephen raised a brow. "Why? Because stability costs more than it pays. My mom's sick. I'm juggling contracts because hospital bills don't care about loyalty." He expected fear or apology. What he got was honesty. Brutal, level, unembellished honesty. He felt something shift. For weeks, they slipped into a rhythm neither of them acknowledged. Long nights, shared takeout, arguments that ended in laughter, conversations that went deeper than either of them intended. Stephen found himself lingering in the hallway just to watch her concentrate. One evening near winter, she fell asleep at her desk, utterly worn out. He found her with her head resting on her arms, breath soft, body trembling with exhaustion she kept trying to hide. He should have woken her. Instead, he draped his coat over her shoulders and worked quietly beside her. When she woke, she looked embarrassed. "You should have sent me home. You needed sleep," he said simply. She stared at him, then a long, searching stare, as if she were trying to decide if the man she was looking at was real. Something fragile and dangerous grew in that silence. Days blurred, tension coiled. Two people who had sworn never to need anyone found themselves orbiting dangerously close. Then came the night that split the sky open. They were reviewing a high-stakes infrastructure plan, a project everyone else feared. But Julie dissected with calm precision. She caught an error that could have cost the company millions. Stephen stared at her notes in disbelief. "You just saved this entire operation." "Just doing my job," she murmured. "No, this is Julie. Do you know how brilliant you are?" She looked away, flustered. "Please don't turn this into something else." "What do you think this is?" he asked quietly. "A professional relationship. That's it. That's all you feel." Her breath hitched. She stood abruptly. "I should go." But Stephen followed. He didn't think, didn't calculate. For once in his life, instinct overruled logic. He reached for her hand, not forcefully, but desperately. "Julie, what if I'm done living like a man made of stone?" She froze. He kissed her. The world cracked. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't planned. It wasn't professional. Months of tension broke open like a dam as they clung to each other with the hunger of two people who'd been cold their entire lives. Her hands grasped his shirt. His breath tangled with hers. Every wall collapsed. They made it to the leather couch papers scattering, breaths merging, the city glittering like 1,000 silent witnesses. For the first time in his adult life, Stephen felt something other than ambition. He felt alive. Afterward, their bodies tangled in the soft darkness. Julie traced circles on his chest. He memorized the shape of her shoulder. They spoke in whispers, the kind of whisper that hides fear inside tenderness. "This changes everything," she said. "I know. What happens tomorrow? I don't know." He pressed his forehead to hers. "But tonight, let's stay in this moment." She nodded, resting her head over his heartbeat. They fell asleep, tangled in borrowed warmth. Neither of them knew that tomorrow would shatter it all. When Julie woke, Stephen was already dressed. He left a note on her desk. "Early meeting. Thank you for your work. S. Cold. Professional. A deliberate retreat." The note felt like a knife. She kept it anyway. Over the next few days, their interactions snapped back to stiff professionalism. They spoke only about work. They avoided each other's eyes. The night they shared became a ghost, haunting every silent moment. And then came the day Julie's world twisted. She stared at the pregnancy test in her bathroom, 2 pink lines burning into her vision. Her whole body trembled. She didn't cry right away. She sat in silence until the truth sank through her bones. She was pregnant, with Stephen's child. She practiced how she would tell him, rehearsed in mirrors, wrote and destroyed drafts, walked through conversations in her head. She scheduled a 15-minute meeting through his assistant. 15 minutes to change a billionaire's life. 15 minutes to ask a man who barely acknowledged what they'd shared not to run away. The morning she walked into his office, he didn't look up. "What is it?" he asked, flipping through a tablet. "I only have a few minutes." "Stephen," she whispered, voice cracking. "Please look at me." He removed his glasses, annoyance flashing across his features. "What's so urgent? I'm pregnant." she said. "The baby is yours." Silence. A silence that felt like drowning. His face hardened into ice. "Are you sure, Stephen? It's convenient timing." "Julie, with your mother's bills." "You think I planned this?" she breathed, horrified. "I think you're smarter than you pretend. It wasn't just a rejection. It was erasure. You told me once you didn't trust anyone," she whispered. "I never thought you meant me." "What you do with the pregnancy is your choice," he said coldly, "but leave me out of it." Julie staggered back as if physically struck. "You never wanted this child. I never wanted any," he said. "Handle it alone." Her voice was barely a breath. "You'll regret this." He didn't flinch. "I doubt that." When she walked out, the world felt too bright, too loud, too cruel. She spent 3 blocks holding herself together. Then she collapsed against a cold wall and sobbed until the city blurred. One hand over the tiny life she'd chosen to protect. "We'll survive this," she whispered. "I promise." And you watching this right now, if this moment breaks your heart even a little, make sure you like the video, leave a comment below, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, this story is just getting started. The morning after the confrontation, Julie woke with swollen eyes and a heart that felt too heavy to lift. She forced herself out of bed, forced herself into clothes, forced herself to breathe through waves of nausea that weren't just from pregnancy. 3 years in the foster system had taught her one thing: no one was coming to save her. Not then, not now, not. She walked to the kitchen, intending to make tea, but her phone buzzed before she could turn on the faucet. A message from Stephen's assistant flashed on the screen. "Your contract has been terminated, effective immediately. Building access revoked." No explanation. No severance. Just erasure, swift and clean. Like she'd never existed. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the counter to stay upright. It wasn't enough that he rejected his child. He destroyed her career, too. For the next 3 days, she existed in a fog. She lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, unable to force herself to answer messages from her mother or colleagues. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Stephen turning away from her, saw his coldness, his disbelief, his accusation. By the 4th morning, something inside her snapped back into place, crooked, bruised, but solid. She stood, showered, dressed, and opened her laptop. If Stephen thought destroying her would make her disappear, he underestimated the resilience carved into her bones by every home that tossed her aside growing up. She spent the day applying to jobs. One rejection, another, and another. No one said it aloud, but she knew what was happening. Stephen's name carried weight. If he wanted her gone, people obeyed even if he never said a word. Her stomach tightened, a sharp reminder of the life inside her. "I won't fail you," she whispered. She booked her first ultrasound, clinging to the hope that hearing a heartbeat might give her the strength she was rapidly losing. And it did. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. A technician spread cool gel across her abdomen, pressing the wand gently against her skin. The monitor flickered to life. Julie held her breath. Then a rapid, rhythmic thump, thump, thump filled the room. And another. And another. The technician paused. "Oh my," This is rare. You're not carrying one baby. Julie blinked. What? You're carrying 3. Triplets. Her vision blurred. Triplets. 3 strong heartbeats. 3 little miracles. Julie wasn't sure if she was breathing. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. 3 babies. 3 infants to protect, feed, clothe, raise, alone. She left the clinic numb, walking into a world that suddenly felt tilted. In the car, she screamed, not out of anger, out of terror. Then she placed both hands on her stomach and whispered, "We're going to survive this, all 4 of us, somehow." But life was not done testing her. Her savings began to evaporate with weekly appointments, blood tests, nutritional needs. She lost her remaining contracts when the fatigue made her miss deadlines. Bills piled like bricks, threatening to bury her alive. Then came the eviction notice. 30 days. Her landlord looked apologetic but unmoved. Triplets. I'm sorry. Julie. But this building isn't equipped for newborn noise. I can't risk the other tenants leaving. 30 days. To figure out how to shelter 3 unborn children, she packed her life into 2 suitcases and checked into a women's shelter. The first night, she lay on the narrow cot, surrounded by strangers breathing in broken rhythms. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Somewhere down the hall, someone cried softly. She stared at the stained ceiling tiles and whispered, "I don't have anyone." Then corrected herself. "I have you 3, and that's enough." But surviving alone required more than grit. It required strategy. So Julie adapted. She bought a used notebook and began documenting everything: budgets, resource lists, timelines. That notebook became her lifeline, her therapy, her battle plan. She launched a blog, Triple Expectations. Her first post went viral without her trying. "I'm a single, expecting mother of triplets. The father told me to handle it alone. So I am." The rawness sliced people open. Comments poured in from women who'd been left, mothers who'd struggled, strangers who saw a part of themselves in her fight. Some offered advice. Some offered kindness. Some offered help. Julie accepted only what she absolutely needed: diapers, formula vouchers, second-hand bassinets. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. At the shelter, she pieced together 3 mismatched cribs from donated parts, assembling them under flickering lights, while other women watched with admiration. "You're strong," Rosa said, an older woman who took Julie under her wing. "But even strong women need a village." Julie wanted to argue, but exhaustion softened her resistance. She blogged late into the nights, sharing not pity, but truth. The bruising fatigue, the fear, the stubborn hope. Her followers grew hundreds, then thousands. People leaned on her honesty. She became a voice for those society expected to be silent. And still, she pushed forward, until one dawn, when pain stabbed through her abdomen, sharp, deep, wrong. Rosa called an ambulance. The hospital lights blurred as doctors rushed. They murmured about early labor, about risk, about stabilizing contractions. Julie clung to consciousness, terrified of what might happen if she let go. After days of monitoring and medication, the danger passed, but the doctor placed a firm hand on hers. "You need bed rest until delivery." How long is that? Months, months of stillness, months without work, months without income. The world tilted again. The shelter arranged a quieter room. Volunteers brought her meals. Julie wrote more because writing was the one thing she could still do. Her blog exploded, 20,000 followers. Then, 50. One comment struck her heart like a spark. Stop saying I. Start saying we. You have an army behind you. For the first time in weeks. Julie cried, not from fear, but from feeling held by people she'd never met. She built a business plan during sleepless nights. Triple Threat Consulting, a remote operations firm for small businesses. If the world wouldn't hire her, she would hire herself. Rosa brought hand-knitted blankets. A nurse named Simone shared stories of single mothers who survived impossible odds. The shelter staff cheered when Julie posted her business launch. She began to believe again. But she didn't know the shadows lurking just outside her rising hope, a journalist digging into her past with Stephen. Corporate insiders whispering, and a storm preparing to circle back into her life. A storm with the face of the man she once let into her heart. And when that storm hit, the world would watch everything unravel. The weeks on bed rest blurred into a quiet war against time. Julie's body strained under the weight of 3 developing daughters, while her mind raced with strategy financial plans, resource maps, contingency lists. Survival demanded motion, yet she could barely move from her mattress. But she adapted the way she always had. Her will became her movement. Triple Expectations, her blog, grew faster than she could track. Her posts raw, sharp, filled with a humor scraped from exhaustion spread across social networks, forums, single-parent groups. People connected with her grit, not her tragedy. She wasn't a symbol of pity. She was proof that resilience had a heartbeat. Yet the internet is a door that swings 2 ways. One evening, as rain drummed against the shelter windows, Rosa shuffled toward Julie's bed, holding a tablet someone donated. "Your story's on the newsfeed," she whispered. Julie frowned. "What do you mean?" Rosa handed the device over. Julie's breath caught in her throat. A journalist had published an investigative article. It didn't reveal names. It didn't need to. The timeline matched her employment, the contract termination, the pregnancy, her sudden disappearance, her survival story. Headline: Corporate Power and Pregnancy, the analyst who was left behind. She felt the air shift around her, a cold, creeping unease. She hadn't exposed him. She never planned to. Yet someone else connected the dots. Her pulse quickened. She scrolled through comments, hundreds, maybe thousands. Most supportive, some furious. People demanded accountability from the unnamed CEO, insisted on justice for the mother who'd been abandoned while carrying triplets. Julie closed the tablet slowly. "Do you want me to turn it off?" Rosa asked. "No," Julie whispered. "I need to know what they're saying." But as she read, a sinking feeling lodged in her chest. She didn't want this to go viral. She didn't want to be a weaponized story. She wanted safety for her children, privacy. Stephen wasn't named, but he might as well have been. Somewhere in his glass empire. He would see this, and when he did, she knew he wouldn't ignore it. Julie rubbed her stomach, trying to steady her breath as her daughters kicked beneath her ribs. "I don't want him dragged," she murmured. "I just wanted him gone." But fate had different plans. Within a day, her blog traffic multiplied. People began tagging the name Stephen Madison in their comments. Just speculation, whispers, guesses. They dug through corporate gossip boards. Employees who once feared Stephen suddenly became anonymous sources. Julie felt panic coil inside her. She didn't want this storm. Not now. Not while she was still vulnerable, still healing. The shelter supervisor approached her gently. "Honey, is this attention safe for you, for the babies I don't know?" Julie admitted. She spent the night staring at the shadows on the ceiling, unable to sleep, unable to ignore the feeling that her quiet survival story had just collided with the life she walked away from. 3 days later, everything escalated when the first video went viral. It was a simple clip, just Julie sitting on her bed, singing a lullaby to her 3 newborn daughters, their tiny faces turned toward her like sunflowers. A follower had shared it on a larger account, then another, then another. By the time she woke the next morning, the video had millions of views. People captioned it, "Strength looks like this. The man who left them doesn't deserve to know what he threw away." Julie's throat tightened as she scrolled. She didn't crave revenge. But the public outrage was like a tidal wave carrying her forward, whether she wanted it or not. Then the corporate world exploded. Stephen's company issued a statement that only made things worse, something sterile about privacy and disputed claims. It felt cold, defensive, guilty. Julie stared at the statement on her phone with a hollow ache. Once again, he handled things without speaking to her. Once again, he chose self-preservation. Except this time, the truth was larger than both of them. A week later, while she fed her daughters at 3 a.m., her notifications erupted. A follower tagged her. He saw the video. Julie froze entirely, heart pounding. She clicked the link. A blurry photo had surfaced online, a paparazzi-style shot of Stephen standing at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, head in his hands, shoulders slumped. The caption read, "Billionaire Stephen Madison responds emotionally to viral mother of triplets video." Julie stared at the image for a long time. It didn't look like the man who'd told her to handle it alone. It looked like someone being crushed by his own reflection. But emotional or not, it didn't change what he'd done. Julie hardened her resolve. This wasn't her fight. It was his reckoning. She would not be dragged back into his orbit. But fate wasn't done. One afternoon, a quiet knock echoed in the shelter hallway. Julie, rocking one of the babies, looked up as a staff member approached. "There's someone asking for you outside. Says his name is Julie already knew." Her lungs tightened. No. She didn't know whether it was fear, fury, or exhaustion. Maybe all 3, but she handed the baby to Rosa and left her room. She stepped outside, and there he was. Stephen stood on the sidewalk in a charcoal coat, looking nothing like the untouchable titan the world knew. His hair was unkempt, his shirt wrinkled, eyes red-rimmed and haunted. Their gazes collided. Neither moved. "Julie," he breathed. Her knees almost buckled at the sound of his voice, but she forced herself still. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I needed to see you." "No," she replied. "You needed to fix your image." A flicker of pain crossed his face. "That's not why I'm here. I don't care why you're here," she said tightly. "Go home." He stepped closer. Just a foot. Please, let me apologize. Let me... You said I lied. Julie cut in sharply. You called me manipulative. You fired me when I was terrified and alone. You told me to raise one baby by myself. You didn't even know it was 3. He swallowed hard. I know. You know because the world told you, she said. Not because you listened to me. Stephen opened his mouth, but no words came out. Julie's voice stayed steady, but something inside her trembled. I survived without you. I delivered 3 babies without you. I raised them without you. You don't get to knock on the door now. He lowered his gaze. I understand. I deserve that. No, Julie said. You deserve distance. She turned to go, but he spoke again, quiet. Breaking. I can still see her. Julie. She froze. See who my mother? He whispered. In their faces. Julie went still as ice. He looked up at her eyes, glassy, voice cracking. I didn't just hurt you. I hurt the last part of her I had left. Julie's breath shook. For one long minute. She couldn't speak. But then she remembered the ultrasound room, the nights on the shelter cot, the fear, the abandonment, and she steadied her heart. You already made your choice, she said, and I made mine. She walked inside. Stephen didn't follow. When the shelter door closed behind her, her legs finally gave out. She slid down the wall, trembling. Rosa appeared, kneeling beside her. Do you want to talk about it? Rosa whispered. No, Julie murmured, wiping her cheeks. I just want to move forward. But deep inside, far beneath the armor, something had shifted, because now that he'd seen his children, the storm was no longer outside her life. It was walking toward her, with every intention of staying. Stephen had always believed that consistency was the backbone of control. Markets stabilized through predictability. Investors trusted steady performance. Strength lived in routine. But for the first time in his life, consistency wasn't about business. It was about becoming someone his daughters wouldn't fear. He didn't show up at the shelter again. He respected the distance Julie demanded, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he began unraveling everything inside him that had made him capable of hurting her in the first place. First came the therapy. His new therapist, Dr. Walsh, didn't coddle him. She leaned back in her chair, observing him with unflinching eyes as he tried to articulate the truth he'd buried beneath layers of wealth and power. My father didn't believe in softness, Stephen said. He believed in punishment, silence, shame, and you believed him. Doctor, Walsh replied. You built a life shaped by a blueprint you never questioned. Stephen clenched his fists. I didn't want to become him. No, she said calmly, but you mirrored him anyway. The words hit like a blow. You didn't reject Julie because she was wrong for you. Doctor, Walsh continued. You rejected her because she made you feel something you were trained to fear. Feel something. The phrase echoed through him. He realized then that Julie had frightened him, not with her strength, but with the possibility that he could be loved, or worse, that he could love back. Therapy became a weekly reckoning. Each session stripped away a new layer of the armor he thought was protection, but was actually shackles. Outside the therapist's office, he began volunteering, not at charity galas, not at press events. At the community center Julie once mentioned on her blog, a place filled with single parents, exhausted families, people living on borrowed hope. Stephen washed dishes. He folded tables. He served meals. He carried boxes until his muscles shook. And slowly, he learned what showing up actually meant. A man named Warner taught him how to handle industrial sinks. A woman named Elena explained how survival shaped humility. A teenager too young for the weight he carried taught Stephen how to listen without attempting to fix. Every night he went home aching, not from labor, but from understanding how disconnected he'd been from real life. Yet he didn't stop. Meanwhile, Julie was building her own world. She moved into a small but warm apartment with the girls, decorated with thrift store finds and donated baby toys. Her consulting business grew steadily. Clients appreciated her honesty, clarity, and the unshakable focus forged in crisis. She spoke at community events and mentoring circles. She became a quiet hero for mothers who'd been abandoned. She didn't forget Stephen, but she didn't dwell on him either. Her life was full, loud, messy, overwhelming, beautiful. Still, late at night, when all three babies finally slept and the apartment fell silent, her thoughts strayed back to the moment he looked at their daughters' faces for the first time. She tried to forget the pain in his eyes. She tried to forget the ache in her chest when she saw it. But forgetting was difficult when every day brought new headlines. Because while Julie rebuilt, Stephen was being dismantled. Board meetings erupted into chaos. Sponsors backed out of key partnerships. Protesters camped outside the headquarters. Corporate vultures started circling, sensing weakness. But Stephen didn't fight back. Not this time. He accepted the consequences, meeting every crisis with disarming honesty. I failed. He told shareholders. I'm dealing with it. The astonishing part, the world didn't know what to do with a billionaire who didn't deny wrongdoing. Julie didn't expect to see him again. But life had its own rhythm. And one evening, as snow dusted the sidewalks like powdered sugar, she stepped outside her apartment with the triple stroller, only to see Stephen across the street, speaking quietly with her neighbor. He wasn't dressed in a suit. He wasn't carrying gifts. He wasn't trying to approach her. He was shoveling the sidewalk. Julie blinked. Her neighbor waved. Julie. This man volunteered to clear the snow, said he wanted to help the building. Stephen looked up then slowly, as if afraid his gaze might break her. Their eyes locked across the stretch of winter. The world held still. He didn't move toward her. He didn't call out. He simply nodded once. A quiet greeting, a quiet apology, a quiet question. Julie looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded back. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, just acknowledgement. Her neighbor chuckled. Oblivious. Wish all men were this helpful. Julie swallowed hard. Sometimes, she murmured. People change. Stephen cleared the entire block that evening. Not for her, not for credit, but because he refused to vanish again. Over the next weeks, she saw him everywhere without him intruding. He held doors for elderly tenants. He carried groceries for a single dad. He repaired a broken railing. He brought warm meals for the building staff on icy nights. Never once did he approach her, but his presence grew undeniable. Consistency, stability, humility. 3 things he'd never offered her before. One morning, Rosa visited to meet the babies and noticed Stephen talking with children at the park across the street. "That one," she murmured, "is trying." Julie's chest tightened. Trying doesn't erase the past. "No," Rosa said softly, "but sometimes it rewrites the future." Julie turned away before the warmth in her chest could grow. But fate wasn't done knitting their stories back together. One crisp afternoon, while feeding the girls on a blanket at the park, she heard hesitant footsteps behind her. "Julie." Her heart skipped. Stephen stood there, snow-dusted coat open, hands gloveless against the cold. His expression carried none of the certainty he once wielded like a weapon. He looked human, mortal, wrecked but rebuilding. "May I sit?" he asked quietly. Julie hesitated, tension rippling through her shoulders. "Just for a minute," he added. She nodded once. He sat carefully, leaving a respectful space between them. The babies babbled, kicking their feet. Stephen watched them with an expression Julie couldn't decipher: wonder, regret, reverence. "They're beautiful," he said softly. "They're mine." Julie replied. He flinched. "I know." Silence settled between them. But it wasn't the old silence, heavy and suffocating. This silence held possibility. Stephen exhaled shakily. "I'm not here to ask anything of you. I'm here because I'm trying to become a man who deserves to know them. Even if that takes years. Even if it never happens." Julie's throat tightened. "Why now?" "Because I finally understand what I lost," he whispered. Julie looked at him, searching for the man she once loved and the man who once broke her. For the first time, she didn't see either. She saw someone new, someone rising from the wreckage. "Change," she murmured, "isn't words." "I know. Change is consistency." "I know. And patience. I know that too." Julie looked back at her daughters, 3 little lives that rewrote everything. "You can sit," she said quietly. "Just sit." Stephen nodded, relief and emotion flashing through him. And so they did. They sat in silence. 2 fractured parents, watching 3 little miracles kick their feet beneath the winter sun. A beginning. Not of forgiveness, not of romance. A beginning of something harder: rebuilt trust. And the world, though still watching, suddenly felt far away. The winter thaw crept in slowly, softening streets and moods at the same time. Julie carried the triple stroller along the sidewalk one sunny afternoon. Bundled babies blinking at the brightness. Their world had expanded beyond the cramped apartment walks around the block. Short visits to the park, sunlight on soft cheeks. Everything she did was for them. Every step forward shaped by their breaths, their tiny fingers, their fragile beginnings. For weeks, Stephen kept to his quiet, respectful distance. He showed up around the neighborhood volunteering, repairing, shoveling, assisting, never hovering, never demanding. He was present, without invading. And Julie watched him, the way someone watches a fire that once burned them, cautiously, with suspicion, waiting to see whether it would warm or destroy. One particular morning, she saw him kneeling beside Mrs. Turner, the elderly woman from 2 floors down. He was adjusting the wheels on her walker while she scolded him with affectionate irritation. "I've lived 82 years without a billionaire tightening my screws," she complained. Stephen smiled faintly. "Then you've been doing it wrong." Julie found herself watching him for too long, until one of the babies squealed in the stroller. Stephen's head lifted at once, as if tuned to the frequency of that cry. But he didn't approach. He only nodded in acknowledgement, wiped his hands on a cloth, and returned his attention to Mrs. Turner. Julie walked on, pushing the stroller with a heart that felt unsteady. By late February, she heard murmurs from the community center. Stephen was becoming something like a fixture there. Kids ran up to greet him. Exhausted mothers accepted his help without judgment. Even the strict volunteer director, Mr. Horace, admitted that Stephen listened more than he talked, which was the highest compliment the man was capable of giving. But none of that changed the reality that Julie still didn't know where he belonged in her life. She told herself things were fine as they were. He was doing the work. She was raising her daughters. Their paths did not need to intertwine. But the universe loves irony. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Julie found herself juggling 3 crying babies at once. She paced the living room, bouncing one child while warming a bottle for another, while the third shrieked like her lungs were crafted from thunder. It was a perfect storm. No nap, no peace, no moment to breathe. Sweat clung to her neck. Exhaustion pulled at her bones. A knock sounded at the door. She almost ignored it, but the knocking persisted, gentle but urgent. Julie opened the door half an inch. Stephen stood there with a grocery bag in hand. I heard he began, gesturing to the cries spilling into the hallway. "Do you need anything?" "No," Julie snapped. He nodded slowly. "Understood. I brought formula anyway. And wipes." And I said no. He swallowed. "Okay. I'll leave them by the door." She didn't respond. He placed the bag down and stepped back. "Take care of yourself, Julie." When she closed the door, she leaned against it and exhaled shakily. Pride was a stubborn companion. It had kept her alive when she was alone. But sometimes pride felt like a weight she couldn't set down. She didn't pick up the grocery bag immediately. But after the girls finally settled and silence filled the apartment again, she opened the door quietly and dragged the bag inside. Inside were essentials. Nothing fancy, nothing excessive, nothing with a receipt that suggested expectation. Just help. She sat on the floor for a long moment, staring at the bag, unsure whether to be grateful or angry or both. 2 days later, she found him outside talking with the building maintenance crew. They were trying to fix a stubborn leak in the basement that had caused several outages. Stephen was on the ground, shoulders dusted with insulation fibers, sleeves rolled up, giving instructions like someone who'd done the work before. He saw her approaching, but didn't get up, didn't straighten, didn't even call her name. He merely nodded once, acknowledging her like any other neighbor. The familiarity of it unsettled her more than she expected. "Mr. Madison," the maintenance lead said. "You sure you don't want to go back to your boardroom? This is real work." Stephen smirked slightly. "That's why I'm here?" Julie didn't linger, but she walked away with thoughts she didn't want. Later that week, at the community center, she overheard something that wrapped around her chest like a slow, tightening band. "Have you seen Madison with the kids?" one woman said. "He's patient, like actually patient. He's been through something." Another murmured, "Grief changes people, Julie paused by the hallway. She didn't intend to eavesdrop, but when someone said grief, her heart thudded. "What happened?" a third woman asked. Someone said he talked about his mother, said he'd been avoiding the pain for years. Julie closed her eyes, absorbing the revelation. She remembered the moment he told her her daughters looked like his mother, the way his voice cracked, the rawness of it. A part of her softened so small, she almost missed it. As spring approached, she noticed tiny changes. Stephen didn't avoid children at the park anymore. He didn't stiffen when babies cried. He didn't shy from mess or noise. It was as though being near chaos had taught him how to find calm. Their interactions remained minimal. A nod here, a brief good morning, a polite gesture. No pressure, no expectations. Until one afternoon, when fate placed them in the same aisle of the neighborhood grocery store. Julie stood at the baby food section, examining labels with a tired frown. The twins in the stroller babbled, while the third slept across her chest in a carrier. She was juggling the weight awkwardly when a jar slipped from her hand. Stephen caught it before it hit the ground. Julie startled. He held the jar out as if it were fragile. "Sorry," he said softly. "Didn't mean to come up behind you." "It's fine," she murmured. He hesitated. "Do you need a hand? I can grab the rest." Julie almost said no. Her pride rose up like an old reflex. But today, she was tired in a way that pressed through her bones. She sighed. "You can grab the oatmeal blend." He retrieved it carefully, placing it in the cart without a word. The silence between them wasn't tense. It was almost normal. "How are they?" he asked quietly, glancing at the babies, growing fast. Julie said, "Loud, stubborn, hungry." He smiled faintly. "Sounds like their mother." Julie didn't smile back, but she didn't snap either. Instead, she asked, "How are you? I hear you're practically running the community center now." He let out a soft laugh. "More like mopping it. Mr. Horace gave me a lecture last week about the proper angle of a broom." Julie raised a brow. "And you listened, I did," he said. "I'm learning." She didn't know how to respond. For the first time, it wasn't an act he performed for her. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was simply recounting his life. That made it harder to dismiss. She cleared her throat. "I should get going." He nodded, stepping back. "Of course." Julie pushed the stroller toward checkout. When she risked one glance over her shoulder, she caught him watching her, not with longing, not with regret, with something quieter. Respect. 2 weeks later, they crossed paths again, this time at the pediatric clinic. Julie sat in the waiting room juggling paperwork while 2 of the babies fussed. Stephen was there for a volunteering orientation. When he spotted her, his eyes softened. "Can I hold one?" he asked. Julie hesitated. The girls wiggled in her arms, sensing her tension. Stephen stepped closer, voice low. "Only if you're comfortable." She swallowed. "Just for a moment." He lifted the nearest baby with a careful, reverent motion, as though holding something sacred. The little girl blinked at him, then reached toward his collar with chubby fingers. Stephen laughed quietly, letting her grip the fabric. Julie's chest tightened unexpectedly. Seeing him hold their daughter was a twist of emotion she wasn't prepared for. He didn't speak, didn't make it a moment. He simply held the baby until the nurse called Julie's name. Then he handed her back, gently. "You're doing an incredible job," he murmured. Julie froze. "That's not something you say lightly. It's something I mean." She gathered the girls, trying not to show how the compliment pierced deeper than it should. She walked into the exam room, unsure how to steady her heart. Over the next month, he remained consistent, not perfect, not intrusive, just present. He sent a donation to the shelter anonymously, though everyone knew it was him. He apologized to staff he once dismissed. He attended therapy religiously, and he showed up at community events, even when there was no press, no cameras, no praise. But the real shift happened one night in early summer. Julie carried the triple stroller toward the apartment entrance, pushing the door open with her foot when she noticed Stephen sitting on the front steps. He wasn't waiting for her. His expression was far away, lost in thought. Julie paused. "Are you okay?" Stephen looked up, startled. "Julie, sorry, I didn't realize I was blocking the entrance." "You're fine," she said. He glanced at the babies with a softness she couldn't ignore. Then he exhaled a shaky breath. "I had a bad session today," he admitted. "Therapy." Julie blinked. He'd never spoken to her about that before. "You want to talk about it?" she asked softly. "Not to burden you," he said. "It's not a burden, if you're being honest." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "My therapist asked me when was the last time I felt truly connected to another human being. I couldn't answer." Julie's heart tugged. "And that scared you?" He nodded. She lowered herself onto the step beside him as the girls babbled in the stroller. "Connection is scary," she murmured. "It means you're vulnerable. It also means I can lose it." Stephen said quietly, "That's life." Julie whispered, "We love anyway." He turned to look at her, eyes raw. "Julie, I don't want to hurt you again. I'm afraid I will. That's something we'll figure out," she said. "Later." For a long moment, they sat in quiet understanding, not forgiveness, not reconciliation. A fragile truth they were both trying. The heat of summer rolled in thick and slow, clinging to the city like a second skin. Julie carried her daughters to the park almost every evening, letting the breeze wash over them and the sunset soften the day's exhaustion. Life, while still difficult, had found a rhythm, and with rhythm came a strange, fragile peace. Stephen was no longer an ache, just a presence, a steady shadow in the backdrop of her world. He joined community events, attended fatherhood classes quietly, and volunteered even more hours. His transformation became a quiet rumor around the neighborhood. Nobody called him a billionaire anymore. They called him Stephen. Julie didn't know what to do with the warm tug she felt every time someone mentioned him with pride. One afternoon, she hosted a consultation meeting in her living room while the girls napped. Her new business, Triple Threat Consulting, had taken off. Clients appreciated her sharp instincts, her ability to solve complex problems with the precision of someone who once performed under immense pressure. She was building a future, one she'd constructed with sweat, stubbornness, and a love that refused to die. But just as life steadied, the past returned in the most unexpected form. It began with a knock. Julie opened her door to find a tall, impeccably dressed woman in a tailored suit, sharp cheekbones, piercing eyes, lips painted a deep red that suggested both danger and confidence. "Julie Johnson," the woman asked. Julie nodded. "Can I help you? I should introduce myself first." The woman extended a hand. "Victoria Hale, Senior Legal Counsel for Madison Holdings." Julie froze. Victoria smiled politely. "May I come in?" Julie stepped back, but didn't gesture her inside. "This is not a good time. I understand. But I'm here on behalf of Stephen." Julie folded her arms. "Is this about the article? The speculation?" "Because I've already said, I don't want any legal trouble." "This is not about legal trouble," Victoria replied. "And it's not about protecting the company either." Julie frowned. "Then why are you here?" Victoria studied her subtly, taking in the baby items, the stroller by the wall, the scent of formula and clean laundry. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. "He wants to amend his will," Victoria said. "He wants to leave everything to his daughters." Julie's breath caught. "I told him I wouldn't proceed unless he informed you. He refused." Victoria paused. "So I came instead." Julie felt the world tilt. "He can't just—" "He's not asking you for anything," Victoria said. "Not name rights, not acknowledgement, not custody. He wants to secure their future." Julie's throat tightened. "Why didn't he tell me himself?" Victoria's jaw flexed. "Because he's afraid you'll think he's trying to buy redemption." Julie looked away, heart pounding. "He asked me something else, too," Victoria added. "He asked whether the amendment could be done anonymously, so the girls would receive everything without the world ever knowing." Julie swallowed. "That sounds like him now." Victoria hesitated. "I need you to know something. I was the one who advised him to fire you." Julie's pulse stilled. Victoria continued, voice low. "Not because of a pregnancy. He never mentioned that. It was because he was changing, distracted, doing things that scared shareholders. Caring about you made him unpredictable, and unpredictable men cost money." Julie stared at her, stunned. "I told him you were a risk," Victoria said. "He listened. I regret that." The confession hit Julie harder than she expected. She gripped the door frame to steady herself. "What do you want me to do with this information?" she whispered. "Nothing," Victoria replied softly, "except understand that he wasn't acting from cruelty alone. He was acting from fear and terrible advice." Julie shut her eyes briefly, overwhelmed. "This is his personal amendment," Victoria continued, "not the company's. I will leave the documents with you. You don't need to sign anything. You simply need to know." Julie exhaled shakily. "Tell him. I appreciate the thought. Even if I'm not ready." Victoria nodded. "I will." As she turned to go, she added, "For what it's worth, I think you changed him. And I think you're the only one who ever could." Julie closed the door and pressed her back against it, heart thundering. Everything she thought she understood shifted. Later that night, as she fed her daughters in the warm, dim light of the living room, she replayed Victoria's words again and again. The idea of him amending his will for the girls silently, without expectation, felt like a new language she didn't know how to translate. She wasn't ready for reconciliation, But she wasn't untouched either. The next evening, she walked the girls to the park. Stephen was there helping children build cardboard boats for a small water activity. He laughed genuinely, freely. Julie watched him for a long moment. Then she pushed the stroller toward him. He straightened when he saw her, surprise warming his features. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," she replied. He glanced at the girls. "Everything okay?" Wace nodded slowly. "Victoria came to see me." Stephen inhaled sharply. "I didn't ask her to, I know," Julie said. He met her eyes, waiting. Julie continued quietly. "Thank you for thinking of their future. It's the least I can do," he murmured. Silence stretched, full but not painful. Finally, Julie said, "You can walk with us, if you want." Stephen looked as if she'd handed him the sunrise. "I'd like that," he said. They walked along the winding path, pushing the stroller side by side. The world around them hummed with soft life, children laughing, wind rustling through leaves, the warm hum of early summer. For the first time, it didn't feel like the past walking beside her. It felt like possibility, a slow, tentative possibility neither of them dared to name. Not yet, but soon. Summer deepened, ripening into nights that smelled of jasmine and warm pavement. Julie found herself watching the world unfold with a strange new awareness, every interaction, every breeze, every moment layered with something she couldn't quite name. Something like anticipation, something like dread, something like hope. Stephen walked beside her more often now, never pushing, never assuming, always matching her pace, always making space for her to pull away if she needed. And she did sometimes abruptly, sometimes subtly, because a heart once shattered didn't know how to welcome softness without flinching. One evening, after dinner with the girls fed and content, Julie stepped out onto her small balcony. The city glowed beneath her, streetlights flickering like lanterns, guiding restless souls. She leaned on the railing, breathing in the warm summer air, letting exhaustion settle into her bones. A knock sounded on her balcony divider, a gentle tap. She startled, turning sharply. Stephen stood on the adjacent balcony belonging to Mrs. Turner, who had apparently gone to bed early and allowed him to water her plants. He held a green watering can and wore an expression that was equal parts awkward and earnest. "I'm not spying," he said quickly. "Mrs. Turner is convinced her orchids only bloom if someone talks to them." I drew the short straw. Julie crossed her arms. "Your presence alone might traumatize them." He laughed softly. "That's fair." She leaned back on the railing. "What do orchids need exactly?" "Apparently compliments." He gestured to the plant. "She told me to tell them they look radiant." Julie snorted. "You." "Complimenting flowers I'm practicing." Stephen's eyes flicked briefly to her before he looked away. "I need the practice." She inhaled, steadying herself. "Practicing for what?" "For speaking without fear," he said quietly, "and without damaging what I'm trying to protect." The admission hit her deeper than she expected. "Stephen," she murmured, "you don't owe me perfect words." He looked up slowly. "I owe you honesty and presence. Everything else, I'm learning." Julie wasn't prepared for the way those words softened the sharp edges inside her. The babies cried from inside the apartment, snapping her back to reality. "I should go," she said. He nodded, stepping back. "Good night, Julie." She slipped inside, closing the balcony door softly. Her hands trembled. This was getting too close, too real, too dangerous. But still, she didn't tell him to stop. A week later, the community center hosted a summer fair booths, food trucks, children running wild with sticky faces. Julie brought the girls in their matching sunflower dresses, each strapped into the triple stroller like tiny queens surveying their kingdom. She didn't expect to find Stephen managing one of the game stations, a ring toss booth painted in bright colors. He handed out rings to an enthusiastic line of children, smiling more freely than she'd ever seen. The girls spotted him first. Kitty squealed and reached for him with chubby hands. Stephen looked up, startled, but the warmth that spread across his face was unmistakable. "Hey," he said, stepping toward them. "You made it." "We did," Julie replied. "Beautiful day." "It is." He crouched slightly, speaking to the babies. "Do you want to win a prize? I happen to know the guy running this booth." Julie smirked. "Bribing toddlers now baby steps," he said, deadpan. Laura managed to fling a ring toward a peg missing entirely, but shrieking with triumph. Stephen retrieved a small stuffed duck and held it out. For outstanding enthusiasm. Julie raised a brow. "You're going to spoil them." "I don't think anything could spoil these girls," he murmured. And Julie's breath hitched. He didn't touch them without permission. He didn't insert himself. He treated every interaction like a privilege. That made it harder to hold her walls. As the afternoon stretched on, Julie wandered through booths, greeting families who'd followed her blog or benefited from her consulting. She'd built a reputation as someone who understood struggle without sugarcoating it, someone who fought fiercely for single parents and low-income families. When people congratulated her, she smiled. When they asked about the girls, she glowed. But when they asked whether she and Stephen were together, she froze. No. She answered simply each time. "We're coexisting." That's it. But her voice didn't quite match the certainty she wished she had. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, Julie found herself by the lemonade stand with the stroller parked beside her. Stephen approached carrying 2 cups. "Peace offering," he said, handing her the drink. She took it cautiously. "I'm not angry." "No," he said. "But you're guarded." Julie looked away. "Wouldn't you be?" He exhaled slowly. "I don't blame you. I blame myself." The sincerity in his tone made her chest ache. "Stephen," she said gently, "you can't live in apology forever." "No," he said, "but I can't pretend it didn't happen either." She sipped the lemonade, staring at the fair lights twinkling like captured stars. "Julie," he continued, "I know I don't deserve a second chance. Not with you, not with them. But I want to keep showing up, even if all I ever get is friendship." She stiffened. Friendship. The word felt strangely painful. "You deserve more than that," he added quietly. "But I won't assume more than what you're willing to give." A silence settled between them, soft, tender, uncertain. Julie finally said, "I don't know what I'm willing to give. I'm scared." "I know," he replied. "And I won't rush you." A shout interrupted them. One of the community volunteers sprinted toward the stage, waving her arms. "We need extra hands." The generator tripped Stephen, handed Julie his lemonade. "Stay here. I'll be right back." He jogged toward the stage. Julie watched him move with focus and urgency, coordinating volunteers and calming parents. He didn't bark orders, he solved, reassured, and acted with the steadiness of someone who'd learned how to carry weight without collapsing. For the first time, Julie realized she wasn't looking at the CEO she once knew. She was looking at a man rebuilding himself. Later that night, as the fair wound down and the girls grew restless, Julie prepared to head home. Stephen approached, wiping sweat from his forehead, looking exhausted but content. "You okay?" Julie asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just a long day." "Thank you," she murmured. "For what? For helping? For everything?" He smiled slightly. "You don't have to thank me. I'm just trying to be the man I should have been." She hesitated, then added, "You're getting close." His expression faltered like he wasn't sure he heard correctly. "Julie, don't read into it," she said quickly. "Just keep being consistent." "I will," he promised. "For them, and for you." He walked her to the exit, keeping a respectful distance. When she reached the sidewalk, she turned. "Stephen," she called. He froze. "Would you like to walk us home?" He blinked slowly, like processing a foreign language, and nodded. "I'd like that very much." They walked through the warm night. The city hummed around them. The babies dozed. And for the first time in years, Julie didn't feel alone. Not entirely. She didn't take his hand. He didn't offer. But the space between them felt alive, quiet, buzzing, full of shifting possibility. A possibility neither dared to touch yet. But soon, 2 weeks later, everything changed again. Julie received a letter, official, crisp, unsettling. It wasn't from Stephen. It wasn't from his legal team. It was from someone she hadn't heard from since she was a teenager. Her last foster mother. The one who'd caused more wounds than comfort. The one who'd disappeared after Julie aged out of the system. Julie stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside were 2 sentences I heard about the triplets. "We need to talk. I'm not dying yet, but I might as well be." Julie sank onto the couch, shaking. Stephen found her that evening sitting on her balcony staring at nothing. He appeared on his side of the divider, pausing when he noticed her expression. "Julie?" he asked gently. "What happened?" She held out the letter with a trembling hand. He read it slowly, jaw tightening. "Do you want to see her?" he asked. "No," Julie whispered. Then she added, "I think I have to." Stephen didn't move closer. He didn't try to hold her. He simply stood still, steady, ready. "I'll go with you," he said softly, "if you want." Julie finally looked at him. For once, she didn't feel anger, fear, or walls. She felt relief. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes." That was the moment she realized she wasn't facing the past alone. Not anymore. Even if love wasn't ready yet, something else was. Trust. Julie hadn't visited that neighborhood in over a decade. The cracked sidewalks, the faded murals, the rusted chain-link fences, all of it felt frozen in time, preserved like an old bruise beneath the skin. She clutched the stroller handle tightly, palms sweating despite the cool morning air. The girls babbled softly, sensing her tension. Stephen walked beside her, not touching, not crowding, but offering silent support in every purposeful step he took. His presence was grounding, even as her pulse hammered with each block they passed. "You're sure you're okay?" he asked quietly. "No," Julie said honestly. "But I'm here. That's brave." "No," she repeated. "It's necessary." Stephen nodded, respecting the distinction. They reached the rundown apartment building that housed pieces of Julie's worst memories. She swallowed hard. The red bricks looked the same, the chipped door frame the same. Even the faint scent of mildew clung to the air like a ghost. Stephen opened the door for her. "You don't have to do this alone." She exhaled unsteadily. "Thank you." Inside. The hallways were dim and narrow. They climbed the creaking stairs to the third floor, apartment 3B, her old foster home. Julie knocked. The door opened slowly. Her foster mother, Marla, stood before her. Older, but unmistakable. Her once hard features had softened with age. But her eyes still carried the sharpness of someone who'd learned survival by clawing. "Well," Marla said, staring first at Julie, then at the girls. "Ain't this something?" Julie straightened. "You said you needed to talk." "I did." Marla stepped aside. "Come in." Stephen stayed close, but Marla blocked him. "He's not family." She snapped. Julie's voice turned steel. "He stays." Marla's brows lifted, surprised. She stepped back without further protest. The living room was cluttered with old newspapers, unpaid bills, stacks of half-eaten meals. The air was stale. A television played softly in the corner. Marla sat heavily in a worn armchair. "You look good," she said. "Better than expected." Julie didn't sit. "Say what you need to say." Marla shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sick. Real sick. Doctors say it's not the kind you beat." Julie's stomach twisted. "I'm sorry to hear that." Marla scoffed. "Don't pretend you care." Julie stiffened. "I didn't come for sentiment." "Why did you write to me?" Marla hesitated, then reached for an envelope on the side table. "I found something," she said. "Thought you should have it before I go." She handed it to Julie. Inside was a birth certificate. Julie's. Julie froze. "I already have mine." "Not this one." Marla rasped. "The original. Before the system replaced it." Julie's heart slammed painfully. "What do you mean?" Marla rubbed her forehead. "Your file was altered. Someone pulled strings. Someone didn't want you knowing your birth family." Julie's pulse roared in her ears. "What are you talking about?" "There were two names, your mother and your father." Marla pointed. "His name is on that paper." Julie's breath hitched. Her hands shook as she unfolded the fragile document. Stephen stepped closer, eyes scanning her face with concern. Julie stared at the name written under father, a name she recognized, a name she knew from headlines, from industry gossip, from her early years scrambling through the corporate world. A wealthy, well-connected man, a man who vanished decades ago. "My father," she whispered. "He was alive. He had money, influence. He could have found me." Marla looked away. "He didn't want trouble, didn't want scandal. Told the agency to bury the record, paid them good money." Julie felt the room tilt. All her life, She'd believed her past was shaped by chance, by abandonment, by the system failing her repeatedly. But now her abandonment had been intentional, planned, paid for. Stephen moved quickly, steadying her elbow. "Julie, sit down." She sank onto the couch, heart hammering so violently she felt dizzy. All those years. She whispered, all those homes, all the fear, the hunger, the pain. He could have ended it. Marla didn't meet her gaze. Power gives people choices. Most of them choose themselves. Julie shook her head, tears spilling. "Why now? Why tell me?" "Because I'm dying." Marla snapped. "And maybe I don't want to carry the weight of your life when I go." Julie stared at her. "You carried nothing." Marla flinched. Silence filled the room thick, suffocating. Stephen spoke softly. "Julie, you don't have to continue this." Julie inhaled shakily. "Yes, I do." She turned back to Marla. "Is he alive?" "Yes." "Where is he?" Marla hesitated. "California. Still rich. Still rotten." Julie closed her eyes, overwhelmed. "You can go," Marla said tiredly. "That's all I had." Julie rose slowly. Every muscle in her body shook. She strapped the babies back into the stroller with trembling hands and walked toward the door. But Stephen paused. He turned to Marla, voice calm but cutting. "You didn't break her," he said. "She's stronger than anything you ever did to her." Marla snorted. "Strong. She still cries." Stephen's eyes sharpened. Strength isn't the absence of tears. It's surviving what caused them. He walked out. Julie followed. Grateful beyond words. Outside. The sunlight felt too bright, too sharp. The world too loud. Stephen walked beside her silently until they reached a quiet block. Then Julie. She stopped. He stepped in front of her slowly, not touching her, but giving her space to collapse if she needed. "Talk to me," he murmured. "You don't have to hold this alone." Julie wiped her face with shaking hands. "My father abandoned me. He paid people to erase me. Stephen. He didn't even try to find me." Stephen nodded. "And that's cruel. It's unforgivable. It's—" Julie cut him off. "He was powerful, and he didn't want me. And now I'm a mother." Her voice broke. "I swore I'd be better than the people who raised me. I swore I'd give my daughters what I never had." Stephen's expression softened with a depth she hadn't seen before. "You have," he murmured. "Julie, you've already broken the pattern." She shook her head. "But what if I can't? What if trauma is hereditary? What if I become—" "You won't," Stephen said firmly. "You're nothing like them." Julie trembled. "How do you know?" "Because I've seen you do the impossible," he whispered. "Every day." A tear slid down her cheek. He reached up slowly and brushed it away with the back of his fingers. Julie didn't pull back. Her breath hitched, but she didn't move. Stephen lowered his hand gently. "Your father made his choices. Ugly, selfish choices. But you're making different ones. You're giving your daughters a childhood built on love, not fear." Julie's shoulders shook. "I don't feel strong right now. You're the strongest person I've ever known." Their eyes locked. for a moment. The world narrowed to the space between them, fragile, trembling, electric. "Julie," he whispered, "you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be hurt. None of this defines you." Julie exhaled shakily. "I don't know what to do." "You don't have to decide today," Stephen said. "But whatever you choose, find him, confront him, ignore him. I'll help, if you let me." Her breath caught. She didn't answer. Couldn't. The weight of her past settled heavily on her shoulders. But for the first time, she didn't feel crushed beneath it. Not with Stephen standing beside her. She pushed the stroller forward slowly, tears drying on her cheeks, the sun warming her skin, and for the first time in her life, Julie Johnson wasn't running from her past. She was walking toward the future, even if it terrified her, even if love was still beyond reach. Right now, trust was enough. The next weeks unfolded like a bruise beneath the skin, tender, aching, changing colors. Julie carried the truth about her father like a weight she hadn't prepared to lift. She could feel it in her chest every morning when she woke, in the tightness of her breath when she fed the girls, in the restless thoughts that kept her awake long after the apartment had grown quiet. Stephen didn't push her. He didn't ask questions. He simply checked on her every day, in small, unobtrusive ways, dropping off fresh fruit at her door without knocking, texting once to ask if she needed anything, walking with her to the community center in comfortable silence. But Julie knew she couldn't outrun this. She couldn't bury her past and pretend it had never been unearthed. She had 3 daughters now, 3 reasons to demand answers. 3 reasons to confront the ghost who'd abandoned her before she took her first breath. One morning, as she changed Kitty on the living room floor, Laura toddled over, holding a crayon drawing, stick figures, 1 big, 3 small. She'd scribbled a tall shape beside them, smiling faces everywhere. Julie swallowed hard. "Who's this?" she whispered, pointing at the tall figure. Laura chirped happily. Julie froze. Her daughter, barely speaking, saw him as part of their little universe. She wasn't sure if that made her heart warm or break. Later that afternoon, Stephen knocked gently on her door. "Can we take a walk?" He hesitated before adding, "Only if you're up for it." Julie bundled the girls into the stroller and followed him outside. They walked toward the quiet riverside path, a place they'd accidentally made into neutral territory. Halfway there, Stephen slowed. "You've been quiet. I've been processing." "That's fair." They stopped under a cluster of tall oak trees, their shade swallowing the harsh summer heat. Julie exhaled shakily. "I want to find my father." Stephen didn't react with surprise, only steady attention. The kind of listening she had once admired in him. "Do you know what you want from him?" he asked. "Yes," Julie said. "The truth. Even if it hurts." Stephen nodded. "Then I'll help you." Julie shook her head. "I don't need help. I need courage." "You have more than enough," he said softly. "But even the strongest people shouldn't walk into pain alone." She didn't respond. "Julie," he murmured, "I don't want to take over. I just want to stand with you." Her throat tightened. "Why do you care so much?" He stared at the river, voice low. "Because I know what it feels like to build yourself from broken pieces. And I know what it feels like to wish someone had held your hand while you did it." Julie looked away. overwhelmed. He glanced at the triple stroller. "When do you want to go?" "As soon as possible," she said, "before I talk myself out of it." Stephen nodded once. "I'll make arrangements. Flights, hotel, transportation." I said, "I don't." "Not for you," he interrupted gently. "For the girls. They need stability if you're away. I'll stay with them. Or, if you don't want that, I'll arrange help from the center. Whatever you're comfortable with." Julie stared at him, stunned. "You would stay with my daughters?" she asked. "Our daughters," he said quietly. Julie's breath cut short. Stephen stepped back immediately, hands raised protectively. "I'm not claiming rights. I'm not pushing anything on you. I'm saying, if you ever allow me to be part of their lives, I'll take it seriously. I'll show up. Every day." Julie didn't trust her voice, so she said nothing. That night, after she put the girls to bed, she sat at her kitchen table staring at the birth certificate. The name printed above father felt unreal. A stranger. A man whose decisions had shaped every hardship of her childhood. Stephen texted once. "Ready when you are." Julie stared at the message, fingers trembling. The next morning, she packed a bag, kissed her daughters goodbye, and left them in the care of the only person she trusted. Stephen stood at the door, holding Kitty as if she were made of glass. "We'll be here when you get back," he promised. Julie nodded and walked out. The flight to California felt unbearably long. Julie spent the entire time staring through the window at the clouds, her mind racing through every possible scenario. Would he deny her? Pretend ignorance? Apologize? Laugh in her face? She forced herself to breathe slowly. By the time she landed, she felt like she had lived lifetimes of anxiety. The address Marla had given her led to a coastal mansion, perched on a cliff, towering. Magnificent. Made of glass and arrogance. Julie stood at the wrought iron gate, heart pounding. The intercom crackled to life. "Yes," Julie swallowed. "I'm here to see Leonard Crane." A pause. "Who's calling?" She steadied her voice. "His daughter." The gate buzzed open. A wave of nausea hit her as she walked the stone path. The mansion door opened before she reached it. A man in his 60s stood there, silver hair, expensive clothes, a face weathered by years of privilege rather than hardship. His gaze landed on her, and it froze. "Who are you?" he asked. Julie held up the birth certificate. "I'm your daughter." He blinked once, twice. Then he laughed. Laughed. Julie's stomach dropped. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked coldly. "It's not a joke," Julie said. "I was in the system. The agency altered my file. My foster mother kept this." He snatched the paper from her hand, scanned it, lips thinning. "I told them to destroy this," he muttered. Julie's heart cracked. "So it's true." He sighed deeply. "Look, I was young, reckless. Your mother wanted more than I could offer. You could have offered love." Julie whispered. Leonard scoffed. "Love. That woman was unstable. I wasn't about to destroy my life for a mistake." Julie's entire body went cold. "A mistake. You," he said bluntly. "You were the mistake." Julie felt something inside her collapse. "I paid for silence," Leonard continued. I paid for distance. I'm not opening old wounds now, and I'm certainly not rewriting my legacy. Julie's breathing became shallow. You abandoned me. He shrugged. You survived. Julie took a step back, shaking. You didn't want a daughter. You wanted a clean reputation. Yes, he said simply, and I still do. Julie stared at him, pain burning through her like wildfire. You didn't even ask about your granddaughters, she whispered. His expression twisted. Don't start that with me. I don't want involvement. I don't want connection. Leave. Julie staggered backward. I said leave. Leonard barked. She turned and ran down the stone path, out the gate, down the street. Tears blurring everything. By the time she reached the rental car, she collapsed into the driver's seat and sobbed like the girl she had once been abandoned, unwanted, unheard. She screamed until her throat burned, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles ached. After minutes or hours, she didn't know her phone buzzed. A video call request. Stephen. Her hands trembled as she accepted it. He appeared on the screen with the girl's kitty, chewing on his shirt collar. Laura waving, Jean babbling happily. Stephen's expression shifted instantly when he saw her face. Julie, he said softly. What happened? She couldn't speak, could only cry silently as her daughters stared at her with innocent confusion. Stephen didn't look away. You're not alone, he whispered. Not anymore. Come home. We're waiting. Julie sobbed harder, but this time, it wasn't from pain alone. She had been denied by the man who made her. But the man who hurt her, before the one she had once loved, was the one holding her daughters steady, the one waiting for her, the one she might someday let back into her heart. Julie wiped her tears. I'm coming home. She ended the call and drove toward the airport, the California sun setting behind her like the final closing of a door she would never open again. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew where she needed to be and who she was driving back to. Julie landed back home just after midnight. The airport was quiet, dimly lit, and hushed with the weight of sleeping travelers. She walked through the terminal with shaky legs, clutching her small suitcase, her heart full of exhaustion and a strange new clarity. Outside the baggage claim doors, Stephen waited leaning against his car, rocking gently back and forth with Kitty snuggled on his shoulder. Laura clung to his leg. Jean held one of his fingers in her tiny fist. Julie froze. It wasn't the sight of him that broke her. It was the sight of him holding the life she built, protecting it, nurturing it, choosing it without hesitation. Stephen stepped forward slowly, not wanting to overwhelm her. You okay? Julie didn't trust her voice, so she nodded. Tears slid down her cheeks silently. He lowered Kitty gently into the stroller, lifted Jean into her seat, and secured Laura next to her sisters. Then he turned back to Julie. You're shaking, he murmured. Come here. She didn't move. Stephen swallowed hard. Julie, please. She folded into him, his arms wrapped around her. Not claim, not possession, not desperation. Warmth, shelter, steadiness. Julie buried her face in his chest and sobbed deep. Painful cries that shook her entire body. He held her tighter, one hand on the back of her head, the other on her lower back, grounding her while her past poured out of her. "It's okay," he whispered. "I've got you. I've got you." When her sobs softened, he didn't let go. She finally pulled back, wiping her eyes. "He didn't want me." Stephen cupped her cheek gently. "That is his failure, not yours." She breathed shakily. "He called me a mistake. You are the miracle he never deserved," Stephen said, "and your daughters are proof of that." Julie stared at him through tears. "I'm done letting broken people define my worth," she whispered. "You should be," he murmured, "because your worth was never theirs to name." Julie's breath trembled with relief. They loaded the girls and drove home. The apartment was quiet when Stephen carried the sleeping babies inside one by one, laying each gently in their cribs. Julie watched him silently from the doorway. Something inside her shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something powerful. A beginning. Over the next weeks, the air between them changed. Julie didn't avoid him anymore. Stephen didn't tread like a man expecting rejection. Their conversations deepened, real, vulnerable, honest. One afternoon, Julie found him building a small wooden shelf in her living room, tools scattered across the floor. "You know I could have bought one," she teased softly. He smiled. "I know, but you deserve something made with hands, not money." Julie's heart thudded. "You're good with them," she said, staring at his hands. "I'm learning," he replied lightly. "Not just the tools," she whispered. Stephen stilled. Their eyes met. The room felt charged, warm, breathless. "Julie," he said slowly, "I don't want to rush anything. Neither do I. But," he continued, stepping closer, "I want you to know something." She swallowed. "What I'm here," he whispered. "Not because I'm trying to fix the past, but because I want a future with you. With them, if you'll have me." Julie's pulse quickened. "I'm scared." "So am I," he admitted. "But I'm not going anywhere." Tears glimmered in her eyes. "I can't give you an answer today," she said. "You don't have to," he murmured. "Just let me stay." She nodded, and that was enough. It happened on a quiet evening. The girls were playing on the rug, giggling as they stacked blocks and knocked them down. Stephen sat cross-legged on the floor, letting Kitty climb over him, while Laura braided his hair with mismatched barrettes. Jean tugged at his sleeve, demanding his attention. He gave it to her, without hesitation, without frustration, without fear. Julie stood in the kitchen watching the scene unfold, and suddenly, something clicked. He wasn't the man who abandoned her anymore. He wasn't the man who denied her. He wasn't the man who broke her heart. He was the man who rebuilt himself to deserve her. With a breath that felt like release, Julie crossed the room and knelt beside him. Stephen looked at her, surprised. Julie placed a hand on his cheek. She didn't speak. She kissed him. Soft at first, an answer in the form of a trembling question. Stephen froze for a heartbeat, then cupped her face gently and kissed her back. With reverence, with restraint, with everything he had been holding back for years. Their daughters squealed in confusion and delight. Julie pulled away, breathless, tears shining. "I'm not promising perfection," she whispered, "but I'm ready to try." Stephen's voice cracked. Julie. She pressed her forehead to his. We deserve a second chance. A real one. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like the treasure he finally understood she was. The girls giggled and climbed onto both of them, turning the moment into a jumble of laughter and tiny hands. And for the first time, their family felt whole. Months passed. Healing wasn't linear, but it was real. Stephen stayed present, patient, humble. Julie allowed herself to trust again, slowly, tenderly. Their love grew not from passion alone, but from resilience, forgiveness, and hard-earned peace. When Stephen proposed at a park bench where they once stood years apart, now together, he didn't kneel. He held her hands, looked into her eyes, and said, "I don't want to complete you. I want to walk beside you, forever." Julie cried, nodded, and whispered, "Yes." Their wedding was small, intimate, filled with people who had become family through struggle and hope. The girls walked down the aisle holding Julie's train, giggling as Stephen cried openly when he saw her. And when they exchanged vows, Julie spoke the words she had once never believed she could say. "You weren't my first chance, but you are my second, and my last, and my best." Years later, as they watched Laura, Jean, and Kitty run through the backyard laughing, Stephen slipped an arm around Julie's waist and pressed a kiss to her temple. "Thank you," he murmured, "for what she asked, for letting me earn this life." Julie leaned into him, heart full, future bright. "You didn't earn it alone," she whispered. "We healed together." And they did. It wasn't a perfect story. It was better. It was theirs.